Wagwan, everyone. If that triggered something in your head, even a little, then you already understand the power of what we're talking about today. Because Wagwan is one of those phrases that travels. You say it to a Jamaican anywhere on the planet, and their face lights up. It doesn't matter if you're in Lisbon, Tokyo, Melbourne, or Nairobi. It's an instant handshake, a signal. It says, I see you, I recognize you. Today, we're getting into Jamaican Patois. What is it? Where did it come from? How was it used as a weapon of survival? And why, after hundreds of years of being dismissed and disrespected, it now sits on Google Translate as a fully recognized language. So this is not just a language story. This is a people story. Let's get into it. Let's start with the news peg, because this is significant. In 2022, Google Translate added Jamaican Patois, also known as Jamaican Creole, on its platform. That meant that it joined 133 other languages, other recognized languages, by one of the world's most powerful translation tool. Now, some of you might say, okay, cool, so what? Here's the so what. For generations, Jamaican Patois was called broken English. Teachers punished children for speaking it in school. It was treated as inferior, a sign that you're undereducated, under-refined. Parents who wanted their children to get ahead told them to speak properly, meaning the Queen's English. And yet, Patwa survived. It thrived. It went global. And now Google has caught up with what Jamaicans knew all along. This is a language, a real one, a distinct one. That validation didn't create the language. It confirmed what was already true. To understand Patwa, you have to understand Jamaica's history, specifically the brutal period of transatlantic slavery and colonial rule. When enslaved Africans were brought to Jamaica by the British in the 17th and 18th century, they came from dozens of different ethnic groups: Akan, Igbo, Yoruba, Bantu, Mandinka, and more. They did not share a common language. Colonizers used this as a tool of control to keep people divided and keep them unable to communicate. But humans are remarkable. When you throw people together and tell them that they can't speak, they find a way. Patwa was that way. It was a language born out of the unification of slaves. That's what made Patwa so unique and has enabled it to survive over the years. The base vocabulary came largely from English because that was the language of the colonizers. But the English was not the Queen's English. It was mainly the Irish and Scottish indentured servants who brought their own phonological influences, which is why some Jamaican speech patterns have sounds that linguistics trace back to the British Isles rather than the standard Southern English. So yes, the cadence was primarily from the Irish and Scottish slave overseers. This is why in February 2026, just a month ago, there was an uproar on the internet of a video of an Irish politician speaking what sounded like Jamaican Patois.
Minister, the new buzzword in this government of infrastructure, right? And then you go away and you blame the local authorities, you blame Ishkirin, you blame the NTA, you blame Commission on Planola, you blame everyone. Minister, I don't know, do you get it, right? Or do you think that we're all fools over here? Because I tell you this, we're not fools. We know what's happening. But it doesn't say that you were in power for the last 15 years. You're blaming everyone else. There's 30 actions in this plan in 30 of the pages, right? I tell you now, you must be trying to destroy the rainforest in the Amazon. 140 pages for what?
A lot of people haven't connected the dots that the English that was spoken to Jamaican slaves at the time was primarily the Irish settlers. They were the ones that the British colonizers hired to oversee the plantation. So naturally, Jamaicans would sound more Irish than British. But the grammar, the rhythm, the syntax, the soul of the language, that came from West and Central African languages. The Akan languages, in particular, those spoken by the Ashanti Fante people of present-day Ghana, and it had a profound influence on Jamaican Patois. You hear it in the sentence structure, in the tonal quality, in the specific words that survived for centuries. So Patwa, at its core, is a language formed from the collision of stolen people, but also from the survival of our people who were stripped of nearly everything. They found a way to communicate, to connect, to resist. What emerged was a Creole language built from the words available to them. That was how it all started. But here's where history gets powerful. Patwa was not just a way to communicate. During the era of slavery in Jamaica, it functioned as a coded language, a way for the enslaved people to speak in front of colonizers without being understood. Slaveholders could catch individual words, many of them, because of course it was derived from English words. But the structure, the idiomatic phrasing, the meaning embedded in African rooted expressions, these flew right over their heads. This mattered, and it still matters enormously because language is power. When you can communicate without your oppressor understanding you, you can organize, you can warn, you can plan. There's documented evidence that Patwa was used during slave rebellions to coordinate movements. Tacky's War in 1760 was one of the most significant slave uprisings in Jamaican history. It involved complex communication among the Akan-speaking enslaved population. Their shared linguistic roots preserved and layered into the emergent Patwa, that gave them the phonetic enigma code that the British could not easily decipher. The Maroons, who were escaped enslaved people who established free communities in the mountains of Jamaica, took this even further. The Maroons of Akan, the descendants of the Akan people, developed their own variation of this coded speech, which is sometimes called Karamanti, named after the Karamanti Akan slaves. It was the language of freedom fighters. So when you talk about Jamaican Patois, we're talking about a language that literally helped people survive. This language carries in it sounds and rhythm of the memory of Africa. It was never broken English. It was always something far more intentional than that. Now, let's talk about popular Jamaican Patois phrases, the expressions that have worked their way into the global lexicon. Jamaican phrases, and there are many of them, Irie, respect, no problem, Likkle more, big up, bless up, are all ways to convey a broader message. But the one that most people would recognize would be Wagwan. Wagwan, it means what's going on, or simple, what's up. But the moment you say it to a Jamaican, it becomes something more than a greeting. It becomes a recognition, a moment of cultural connection. Ask any Jamaican who lived abroad or lives abroad, and there are millions of us in the UK, Canada, the United States, and across the globe. And they'll tell you that the moment someone who is not Jamaican uses Patwa correctly, it causes a reaction, warmth, surprise, laughter, and sometimes a raised eyebrow that says, "How you know that?" For the sake of time and not making this a long drawn out video, I will not be showcasing Jamaican phrases. There are a lot of videos on YouTube for that, nor will I be diving into the linguistic pronunciation or the phonetic expressions. Again, I will pin some videos in the description below that might be helpful if you are interested. Right now, this is the part that moves me the most. Patwa is the foundation of what is one of the biggest influence on global music, reggae. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Burning Spear, just to name a few, they took Patwa to the world stage. Reggae musicians use the same effectiveness of Patwa, transcending and delivering it through reggae music. Straight to the point, no emphasis on grammatic placement. We don't have time for that. The music has to speak loud and clear. Oh, pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. 4 lines, 21 words took us from the continent of Africa to the shores of Jamaica in 4 lines. No mention of Africa or Jamaica. That is the beauty of Patwa. That was the language that our ancestors gave us. Conveyed through reggae music, Patwa sung in songs makes the message clear. The melody of Patwa, along with the rhythm of the music, guarantees that the message is delivered. It is understood even if you don't speak the language. Today, you will find and hear Patwa phrases in British grime music, in American hip hop, in Afro beats, and so many other genres. When musicians use Patwa influenced cadences, they are drawing from a well that goes back to the mountains of Jamaica, those coded conversations that was our survival language. If you're enjoying this monologue and if this type of content has enriched you in any way, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and I know that we should be able to do so with this video. Thank you in advance. Now, despite everything, despite being told Patwa was inferior, despite the colonial education system that punished children for speaking it at home and abroad, despite immigrants communities being pressured to assimilate, to speak properly, Jamaicans never let it go. The reach of Patwa is not accidental. It's the reach of a culture that refused to be silenced. On the island, Patwa remained the language of everyday life. In the yard, in the market, in the rum bar, in the church pew. It was what you spoke to your grandmother. It was what you argued in, you laughed in, mourned in. Standard Jamaican English existed, but Jamaicans know how to code switch when needed. In job interviews, in the government office, in a bank, in the classroom. But at home, in the community, that was always Patwa. And in the diaspora, the same held true. Jamaicans who moved to the UK in the Windrush generation of the 1940s and 50s, they arrived speaking Patwa and continued to speak it. Their children, born British, still speak it. Their grandchildren still speak it. It became a marker of identity, of pride, of belonging to something specific in a country that often tried to make them generic. Same in Canada, same in the United States. And if you're not thinking me in business, there's one more fascinating thing about Jamaican Patois. Did you know that there is an official New Testament Bible fully written in Jamaican Patois called the Jamaican New Testament Bible? It was released in October 2012 and was launched to coincide with Jamaica's 50th anniversary of independence. Published by the Bible Society of the West Indies, headquartered in Kingston, Jamaica, and is acknowledged and approved by the Bible Society of the West Indies, the British and Foreign Bible Society, and the United Kingdom's Bible Society. So, I don't know, joke thing. The Jamaican New Testament Bible can be purchased on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk, and from select stores in Jamaica and the UK that sells Bibles. Jamaican Patois is one of the most remarkable language on the earth, not just linguistically, but historically. It was born out of the worst of human conditions and became one of the most globally recognized cultural signature of any small nation. Jamaica has 2.9 million people on the island, and yet its language, its music, its food, and its spirit is found everywhere. There's a lesson in that. When you carry your culture with pride, when you refuse to shrink to fit someone else's comfort, it travels, it endures, and it influences. So Wagwan, it started as a greeting between people trying to survive. Now it's the first thing the world says when it meets a Jamaican. That's the power of a people who never forgot who we are. So yes, Jamaican Patois is a language, and it didn't survive because it was officially protected. It survived because people chose it again and again, generation after generation. Because to speak Patois is to say, I know who I am. I know where I'm from, and I'm not ashamed of either. This is Jamaican in Kenya. Please like and share if you've learned something new today. Drop a comment. I want to know what's your favorite Patwa word or phrase. Also, subscribe and click the notification bell to get notified about any new videos dropped. Respect and Gwaan, big up yourself. Out of many, one people. Karibu. Bless up.